In case I haven't made this point clear enough, I was not satisfied with Sonic Forces. My first playthrough was less than 3 hours, which would be fine if I felt like my time and money wasn't wasted. This whole experience around this game taught me not to get drawn to the hype for any future Sonic titles or any games in general, but I do not recommend it unless you are a Sonic fan.
If I only knew what the future had in store for this series. How's it going, folks? Welcome to my incredibly in-depth review for Sonic Frontiers. It's good to be back. I mean, it hasn't been that long. The Punch-Out video came out like what? Oh my god, it's been 2.5 years since then? Jeez, that's a long time. I was still a sophomore in college back then, and it was peak COVID. I couldn't leave the house. Everything was locked down, which is why I ended up making those 3 old reviews that are still on this channel in the first place, because I literally had nothing better to do. But now here we are, 2.5 years later. I've graduated college. COVID is still technically ongoing, but, you know, things aren't locked down anymore. And, you know, a lot has happened since then. Just to give a short recap, I ended up taking a date to the first Sonic movie, which is really funny. I forced 20 people that aren't even Sonic fans to see Sonic 2 with me. Also pretty funny. I've committed the sin of playing and now, unironically, kind of enjoying Sonic 06, especially Shadow Story. That stuff is based. But hey, at the very least, I'm not the only one that's been slacking off. This is the first brand new Sonic game in over 5 years, and the first good Sonic game in 5.5 years. Before getting into the actual review, I just want to go over my personal experience with the lead up to this game, as I feel that's important to discerning my feelings on the actual final release of the game itself. For the 2 of you that have actually watched my Sonic Forces retrospective from all those years back, you would know that while I was really excited prior to that game coming out, I was pretty disappointed with its final release, and I have held on to that grudge for a few years now, but I'd like to think that I've mostly moved on from that.
Another shadow?
Sky is faster than Sonic!
I am not weak!
None of this is good, Vector. That's why it's called
Sonic Forces.
My ultimate masterpiece! Zavok! No!
Are you doing alright, dude? Yeah, no, I'm fine. Yeah. I'm making this video to be kind of a pseudo-sequel to that old Forces video, so I'll probably end up comparing both games throughout, but it doesn't really aim to be like a comparison video between the two, but I'm probably just going to bring up Forces a couple times, just because this is the first game to come out since then. In fact, I did actually do another full playthrough of Sonic Forces a couple days before Frontiers came out, just to see if my opinion on the game has changed, and nah fam, this still ain't it. If anything, I dislike the game even more than during that old video. There just is really nothing going on here. This game's lame story, despite the interesting premise, incredibly straightforward and lackluster gameplay. It's just all pure wasted potential, but that's in the past. Let's move forward. Forces is... it's in the dumpster now. We're done with it. But how has it been over 5 years since that game came out, you may ask? Has the franchise just been left in limbo all this time? Has Big's Big Fishing Adventure 3 come out yet?
The answer is yes and no.
The game series has been kind of left out to dry for a little while, with Sonic Mania getting some neat DLC in 2018, a couple of spin-off games and remasters having come out since the release of Forces as well. All of which I could say are pretty solid releases. And also, while we're on the subject, what is everyone's problem with Sonic Origins again? It's the best versions of these first 5 games, all playable on console. Sorry to get off track again, I just don't really get what the issue of. My only problem playing the game was like when it first came out, Tails wouldn't stop fucking jumping in Sonic 2. But other than that, I thought it was fine. I don't know, maybe I just got lucky compared to other people. Sonic has, however, really found success in various other multimedia, such as the ongoing IDW Sonic comic, which has reached over 50 main issues and many side issues since the release of Sonic Forces. I honestly really want to do a video on the series at some point because it's just peak Sonic storytelling. The series even got an incredible over 2-hour-long symphony orchestra that remixed so many songs from nearly every main game in the series for the 30th anniversary. But most importantly, Sonic has returned to the public eye with the release of 2 major Hollywood films that were both some of the most successful video game films ever produced. And now this series is even getting its own Netflix show, which is premiering next month, unless this video uploads later than that, but hopefully it doesn't. Sonic is really on top of the world in every media except the one he debuted in. With Sonic finally back in the public's good graces and having tons of new fans with the movies and comics, all Sonic needs to complete his post-Forces redemption arc is just a great game. During this time, we all knew that Sonic Team had something cooking, but not sure what exactly. Back in July of 2021, Sega hosted their first of a grand total of 2 Sonic Centrals, which was basically a Sonic Nintendo Direct, where they announced some upcoming collaborations and the like. But they ended with a small tease at a new game. While the trailer did give audiences the grand revelation that Sonic will indeed be in it, we didn't learn much else besides that he seems to have some strange Phantom Ruby-looking energy emitting from him. Sick! Infinite's finally gonna get his sick redemption arc! For 7 months, that's all we had to go off of besides leaks, which I won't go over here because most of them ended up being wrong anyway. I can't believe we seriously at one point believed Super Sonic was gonna fight Eggman in a tree. We basically knew nothing about the game besides that somehow through the hyperlink text of the promotional image for something, we learned the game was called Sonic Rangers.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Yo, Ranger Rick, what are you doing?
Yeah, that's what fans ended up calling the game during this time, which honestly looking back, I don't feel like the name really fits with the final release at all, so I'm glad they changed it. It wasn't until that year's Game Awards where we finally got not only the first trailer for the second movie, which was friggin' awesome by the way, but an actual reveal of the game itself. Kinda. We got some more CGI footage of Sonic running through the woods, camera panning shots over what seemed to be a vast open world. Remember this structure right here for later? Trust me, it'll be important. And Sonic approaching some form of massive robotic creature. This teaser didn't give us much to go off of other than basically confirming that this game is going open world, but we had no clue how Sonic would actually interact with the world. We didn't see any gameplay. The world seemed empty with not much going on, but I was intrigued at the very least. Ever since the first Sonic game, all you ever really did in the games was run through a linear stage to reach the end. So dropping Sonic in a vast open environment could definitely be interesting if done right. This was also the point where we learned the actual name of the game is Sonic Frontiers, which, yeah, it's way better than Rangers. This was the absolute most painful part of this game's hype cycle. We went 6 months of waiting and waiting for the eventual gameplay reveal of the game. Fans were getting pretty impatient with this, and many were getting into heated debates about the game, which is weird because we didn't know that much yet. I myself was getting pretty antsy during this period, but was trying to remain optimistic. But with me going through my senior year of college at this point, I was far too busy working on my capstone project and various other game dev projects to really care what the new Sonic game was going to look like. Finally, in the summer, we had our first gameplay reveal unveiled through IGN, which was one of the worst video game presentations I have ever witnessed. I set aside time and was getting genuinely hyped, but as I watched the 6-minute video, my excitement fell off to confusion, which fell off to concern, and then disappointment. This whole time, a big reason I was optimistic about Sonic going open world was because that meant the developers could create a new gameplay style for Sonic, or perhaps lean back into the adventure era gameplay. But this footage made it look like they just put Sonic Forces Sonic into an open environment and called it a day. It didn't even look like he could run that fast, or that there was actually that much to do in the game besides aimlessly running around. The rest of the month, I was just done. I was watching the videos from IGN as they dropped, but nothing was really doing it for me besides the one with, the IGN dude talking about his experience with the game firsthand and talking about how much fun he had. But at this point, I was just like, yeah, Sega probably just paid him off or some crap like that. This was also the in-between period of time after graduation when I couldn't yet find a job, so my pessimism was just pretty high in general.
It wasn't until later in the summer when a bunch of games journalists actually got their hands on the game, with the majority of them providing incredibly positive feedback that got me interested in the game again. Well, if everyone that's actually played the game says it's good, especially game journalists who are honestly pretty notorious for bashing on anything Sonic, then hey, maybe there's hope. And throughout the next few months, things just kept getting more and more positive. More people got to play the game, and nearly all of them talked about how much fun it was. Sega was marketing the game much more heavily than any previous Sonic game I'm aware of, especially compared to Sonic Force's abysmal marketing campaign, with a few caveats such as some of the linear cyberspace levels reusing level design from past games, which I'll get into more during the review proper. I was fully on board the hype train. Everything was pointing to the game being genuinely great, but I won't lie, there was this constant stinging feeling in the back of my mind that I've been here before, done this song and dance, only to be burnt in the end. This constant feeling that this game may end up being another Forces never really left my mind until the game eventually came out. While optimistic, I kept myself prepared for another disappointing game. It was at this point we got the release date of November 8th. After some more trailers and more continued hype, I decided I wanted to take a small vacation from work during the first few days that the game was out, so I could just sit back, put up my feet, and stream the game with some of my friends. The reviews for the game came out the day before its release, and they were all mostly positive as well, which is awesome. There were some mixed reviews, and there was one hilarious 1 out of 5 review, but, you know, whatever. I had a hard time focusing on work and other responsibilities at this point because I could not really think of anything other than the game, while also avoiding spoilers, which luckily I didn't really get any before beating the game. I also just want to give a quick shout out to my sick as fuck friends who helped distract me with a lengthy Discord call the night before the game came out. Definitely helped make the wait much less painful. But eventually, it became November 8th, and I was finally able to play the game throughout the next week, streaming the whole thing. Which, if you care at all to see my impressions of every part of the game, the entire stream series is on this channel.
And now, here we are. What has felt like an incredibly lengthy journey of hype, followed by despair, followed by more despair. But then ending with some more hype, here we are. The game is finally out. So, what's the final verdict? Let's hop in.
Just a quick warning before jumping into the review, I will be spoiling this whole game rotten. I want to get my full thoughts out there, and so if you haven't played or seen the game yet yourself, then please click off this video. Just to give my quick thoughts, I do recommend the game and I do think it's worth full asking price, but let's not jump ahead here. Let's begin with the plot synopsis. Well, actually, the start of the plot isn't contained in the game itself, but in a beautifully animated 2D short posted to the Sonic Twitter and YouTube channel showing off how Knuckles ended up in the game. To keep it short and simple, he puts a child in harm's way, performs some DIY, reads the instructions wrong, beats up some dudes with a bad case of gamer neck, and then gets kidnapped by a Hot Topic reject. Mondays, am I right? Nah, but for real though, Knuckles is taking a routine check around his island just to make sure everything is a-okay until he discovers this massive ancient-looking throne that Knuckles states is even older than the ruins of Sky Sanctuary. He ends up accidentally activating the throne, which teleports him to this mysterious desert-looking biome. He shouts to the sky thinking this is one of Eggman's schemes, but is only greeted with the aforementioned gamer necks. They do battle, which is super cool to watch, but Knuckles ultimately fails and gets trapped in this mysterious-looking cage thingy. Well, that fucking sucks. There's also a short prequel comic that released as well, but I'm not really going to go into it. It doesn't really explain anything about the game, just kind of sets up that Sonic, Tails, and Amy will be going to some islands, but we'll get into that in a bit. This leads into the game proper, with Eggman approaching a different strange throne-looking thingy and sticking something in it. This causes the throne to make some, interesting noises. Before Eggman notes that something is coming online before getting sucked into the throne itself. Okay, so that's a 2 for 2 on characters getting trapped in these chair thingies. Maybe they just want to show off their Professor Slughorn cosplay. Who am I to judge? We're then finally caught up with what Sonic and crew are doing, and we see that Tails is flying the tornado at the beginning of the game, which is always such a good, solid start. Anyway, Sonic says something about them tracking down the Chaos Emeralds to the Starfall Islands before, gasp, a massive wormhole opens and the tornado gets sucked in. Who could have saw this coming? Has Tails ever once landed this thing safely? Oh my... Suddenly, Sonic is trapped in a digital Green Hill Zone that he is able to traverse and enter a portal to escape. He wakes up in the middle of a grassy mountainous region without his friends, and I guess whatever he put in those chili dogs starts to kick in, because the sky literally starts talking to him and gives him some vague clues as to what to do. Like, bro, you just gotta find the Chaos Emeralds, beat up some big boys, and tear down the walls between the metaverse. Finally, releasing the Zuck from his digital prison and unleashing
his lizard terror upon us lowly mortals. Nah, but actually it'll just save your friends. Alright, bye.
Sonic gets to tracking down the Chaos Emeralds, eventually finding Amy and freeing her from a similar looking cage to the one Knuckles got trapped in the prologue. With the cage broken, some strange energy flows into Sonic, and Amy seems to be concerned, with Sonic rebuttaling with, "Haha, no worries, Ames. Once you get turned into a furry, nothing can hurt you anymore." And going on his merry way before a big boy shows up alongside the same strange girl we saw in the prologue. She talks mad shit, telling Sonic that he is cringe and has no drip and needs to leave. He ignores her and runs for the Titan, only to get... After barely surviving the ordeal, Sonic decides the Chaos Emeralds are his only option for taking down the Titans, so he gets to gather it. It's at this point of the story where things start getting pretty formulaic. Sonic will search around the island, locate the Chaos Emeralds with some assistance from Amy and these adorable little creatures called the Coco, who are way cuter than Chow's, don't even at me, and then fights and defeats the Titan in an epic battle as Super Sonic. This same process is repeated with the next two islands, where Sonic will encounter Knuckles and Tails respectively, while gathering the Chaos Emeralds to defeat the next two Titans. All the while uncovering the secrets of the Starfall Islands and discovering what exactly happened here, which we'll get more into at the end of the story synopsis. Where this portion of the game lacks an engaging plot, it makes up for with the best character interactions in the entire series. I'm serious. I think the more quiet parts of this game's story, where Sonic is just interacting with his friends, and Sage has some of the best and most interesting dialogue that we've seen in a very long time, while exploring each relationship between Sonic and his friends in more depth than we've seen in any past game. I think due to being stuck in this cyberspace-like state, they kind of realize how fragile their lives really are and want to change something in them that they know they'd regret otherwise. Amy wants to share love around the world and spread happiness, Knuckles learns to lighten up and take a break from his role as the guardian of the Master Emerald, and Tails wants to set off by himself as his own hero, not relying on Sonic. It's great seeing these characters act like actual people for the first time in such a long time without the constant jokes and one-liners being thrown in, while also bringing up events from the past games at times that feel genuinely necessary and relevant. The references do sometimes feel a little forced and overdone, but I think it's done tastefully for the most part, and I'd rather the games acknowledge what has happened in the past rather than ignoring it like so many other modern games do.
Right, that makes sense!
No, it doesn't.
While Sonic is searching for the emeralds across the islands and interacting with his friends, he also finds himself interacting with Sage as well. She is trying to stop Sonic at any cost for two reasons: to stop Sonic from tearing down the walls between dimensions, and to protect her master, Dr. Eggman. Turns out, the thing Eggman uploaded to the Ancients database at the beginning of the game was Sage. She's an AI he created to try to harness the power of the Ancients' technology, so she was uploaded to cyberspace, but once she was there, she discovered something horrible, and decided that the best way to protect Eggman was to trap him in cyberspace himself. So, for the majority of the game, he is trying to desperately find a way out. She's the one responsible for sending all the enemies and Titans after Sonic. Sonic takes notice that she's clearly trying to protect something, so he gives her the benefit of the doubt, even stopping Knuckles from attacking her at one point, which... Wait a minute. Sorry to sidetrack again, but what exactly are the rules of being trapped in this cyber-like state? We clearly see multiple times that the characters can't interact with the physical world around them, which doesn't explain how they're able to stand on the ground, but whatever. But Knuckles is able to block a blast from Sage to protect Sonic at one point. What the heck is up with that? Sonic even teases Knuckles later on that he can't fight in his current state, so which is it? But then there's another side conversation where Knuckles said he punched some of the ruins, so what gives? Whatever, it's ultimately not a big deal, but I wish they were a little more consistent with what the rules are with cyberspace. Sorry, anyway, back on track. Throughout the course of the game, we see Sage interacting with Eggman, who both develop a lot of respect for each other, Eggman eventually thinking of Sage as his own daughter. It's really neat seeing a more nuanced take on the character after so many years of him just being a straight evil villain. It's pretty cool. But not everything is all sunshine and rainbows though, because Sonic himself is going through some shit. Remember that energy that flowed into him earlier? Well, that stuff is slowly but surely corrupting him. We see throughout the whole story, with Sonic getting more and more tired and in more pain as the game progresses. Even his idle animation on the third and especially the fourth island is a constant reminder of what the guy is going through. I love Sonic's characterization here. Well, I don't mind how he is in games like Lost World, and I honestly overall like his characterization in Forces just fine. Seeing everything he is willing to put himself through just to do what he deems is the right thing is such a perfect take on the character, and I love how optimistic he tries to be about the whole situation to help give the other characters hope. He wasn't entirely sure they would even survive until asking Sage, where she confirms to him that they aren't in any life-threatening danger. Even giving Sage the benefit of the doubt after everything she has done to him throughout the story is also a great demonstration of his character development and everything he's gone through in past games. This isn't his first rodeo with a misguided character trying to stop him for one reason or another. His interactions with his friends are also all perfect. I love the brotherly rivalry he has with Knuckles, with the two yelling at each other even right after Sonic frees him.
Some rescue. I'm still half ghost. I'm working on it, okay?
And continuing to bicker throughout the second island. But notice I added the word brotherly there, because as soon as Knuckles opens up about his own insecurities towards the end of this portion of the story about how he is all alone and his whole race is extinct, Sonic is right there to help remind him that even if his race is gone, he's got all of his friends to love and support him. I'd argue Sonic's talks with Tails are somehow even better, with Tails constantly getting down on himself about always needing Sonic to help in so many situations. The way Sonic treats Tails like a little brother in this game, even calling him little bro, is just so precious. Sonic eventually helps Tails find his confidence, calling back to all the times Tails has not only saved Sonic, but entire cities and even the world before in the past, reminding Tails how proud of him he is, helping Tails find the confidence to finally decide to go out on his own without Sonic. I really just love this stuff so much. It feels so genuine and so Sonic. God, it's good to be back, man. This stuff really is the strongest aspect of the plot, in my opinion, but we still have the endgame to go over, and this is where some of my issues with the narrative start to show up. After playing some of what can only be described as hell, if it were to be stuck within the confines of a pinball table, Sonic is finally able to take down Metal Face, and he's finally able to avenge Fiora for killing her, and he takes out the Monado, and he starts slicing it like, wait, no, sorry, I meant the third Titan, which opens up the way to free his friends from cyberspace. After this, he is somewhat randomly teleported to definitely not the other half of Kronos Island that you weren't allowed to explore before. I mean Rhea Island, where 6 massive towers are erected from the ground. Sonic needs to climb these towers and release the locks to free his friends. After each lock, we are provided with a cutscene showing off exactly what is going on with these islands and how an incredibly ancient race of aliens had to escape a foe that destroyed their home world and use the power of the Chaos Emeralds being drawn to the Master Emerald to find Earth. Yes, I'm calling it Earth. Mobius is a stupid name. It sounds like Morbius. After arriving on Earth, they settled on the Starfall Islands, and they even created the cyberspace dimension that Sonic's friends are stuck in to archive everything about their lives and culture should something happen to them. Unfortunately, something happened to them. They learned that their enemy that they tried to escape actually followed them, so they began preparing for war. This eventually led to the creation of the very same Titans that we have been fighting throughout the entire game. However, the Titans alone couldn't stop the enemy, but before they were all wiped out, they managed to seal the massive force in cyberspace, where it remained until the events of this game. This I'm fine and cool with. In earlier games and lore, it was stated that the Chaos Emeralds were created by the gods. So it's funny how a more modern culture would interpret power used by ancient aliens to be that of a god. It honestly makes a lot of sense. And also, anyone that's played Sonic Adventure would be able to easily tell that these aliens and Chaos himself have a striking resemblance to each other, which I'm not entirely sure what the implications of that really are, though, but it's interesting to think about. It also implies that Chaos himself isn't really a god of destruction, but an alien. That's kind of cool. But it makes you wonder, if Chaos could fuse with the Chaos Emeralds to assume his perfect form, why didn't the Ancients make use of this power to try to stop their enemy? Then again, Sonic didn't even need to use his super form to stop Perfect Chaos in Generations, so I guess the Titans were their best bet after all. Sonic somehow manages to release the final lock, and his corruption seemingly permanently freezes him forever. The dude's done. For about 3 seconds before his friends hold hands and get him back to normal health. What? I'm sorry, bruh. What? This is the single worst part of this game's plot. The whole game, this cyber corruption is constantly brought up, and Sonic is constantly reminded of the danger of his actions, and we see him struggle through this pain for it to all just be solved in a matter of seconds in the middle of a cutscene. I think it's implied that Sonic's friends voluntarily go back into cyberspace to help remove his corruption, which, yeah, it's nice to see them sacrifice for him after everything he just did for them. But in terms of gameplay here, there's nothing. It's just a cutscene. Instead of nothing, maybe Sonic has to go through some trippy dream sequence in cyberspace where the voices of his friends yell at him about like his own insecurities, and he sees images of himself failing to protect them from danger. All the while, his actual friends are yelling to him in the real world to help him escape the dimension. Yeah, it's a little cliche, but I think it would have been the perfect role reversal after Sonic helped all of them emotionally and physically throughout the entire game here. With how easily this part of the game is solved, it does make me wonder if they wanted to do something more substantial, but didn't have the resources and time to implement it. I've seen several reviewers make note about how this is similar to the last story segment from Sonic 06, where his friends have to set out separately to help save him, but like, Sonic's the only playable character in this game, so obviously this segment couldn't have been handled like that, but what do I know? Whatever, moving on, let's wrap this up. Turns out the Sky Voice guiding Sonic along was that very same enemy that destroyed the Ancients so many years ago, which was somehow a plot twist I didn't see coming, even though looking back, it should have been very obvious. But with no time left, and with the combined efforts of Sonic, Eggman, and Sage, they uncover the Chaos Emeralds one last time and use their combined strength to defeat the final Titan and the End itself. No, that's seriously what the Ancient's enemy is called. The End. Sage ends up needing to sacrifice herself to destroy the End once and for all, which, yeah, there's so many of these Sonic games, whoever the new ally is in the game will either die in the end or go away forever at the end of the game. So, while I was sad to see this, I wasn't really not expecting it. Anyway, Sonic and crew fly out, and Eggman is left reaching toward the stars, longing for his lost daughter, until the after-credits scene where it shows that, hey, he rebuilt it. So, maybe she'll stick around for future games, which is pretty cool. Minus my one major issue with how easily the cyber corruption stuff is solved, I enjoyed almost every other aspect of this game's story. The characterization of everyone is fantastic, and the stakes are high, but it also feels very personal with such a small and focused cast of characters. There's really only like 6 characters in the entire game if you include the End. And the lore this game adds to the series as a whole is incredibly cool and fits right in with everything that came before so well. I was slightly worried about what Sage's character would be like prior to release, but she ended up becoming one of my new favorites in the series. Seeing her observe Sonic from the perspective of someone that is supposed to hate him, and learn a lot about things like friendship and life and love from his interactions with his friends is all just precious, and her development from trying to kill him to teaming up with him to take out the End is, well, somewhat predictable, was really cool to see. This is a story made for longtime Sonic fans, and pays so much respect to the series that came before in so many wonderful ways. I implore any Sonic fan that hasn't played the game yet to play it at least for the story. Granted, I just spoiled the whole thing, but, you know, whatever. It's still really cool to see it pan out. While not the best story in the series, this is absolutely much higher quality writing than anything we've gotten ever since Black Knight. Forces wish it had this game's plot and writing. However, unfortunately, somewhat like Forces, the way the story is presented is somewhat of a mixed bag. Where the majority of that game's plot was told in static text boxes, which is still very embarrassing, not gonna lie. The majority of the cutscenes in this game involve static character models talking back and forth to each other with pretty limited animation. Not every cutscene is like this. I'd say about half of them have actually really nice animation, some of the best in recent games, I would say. I especially really love the facial animations this time around. Sonic especially is able to display such a wide range of emotions with his face in this game compared to probably any other game in the series. The acting is also all top-notch. Every actor does a great job. The only character's actor that I actually had any real problem with was actually Sonic's, at least when I first started the game. Roger Craig Smith has been voicing the character for nearly 12 years now, longer than I've been a fan of the series, so seeing him provide a much deeper voice for Sonic this time around was honestly odd to get used to. At first it just sounded like Chris Redfield was just trapped in Sonic's body.
Oh, shit. Wesker. Suck on this, Wesker.
But I think as time went on, Roger's voice settled into this new direction a lot better, until he eventually started giving his best performance in the entire series.
Alright, we are now about
30 minutes and 42 seconds
into this video, and we haven't even discussed the actual gameplay yet. I'm sorry, I just really wanted to go in depth about the journey to this game and a lot about the narrative before really hopping into the gameplay, but now here we are, so let's dive into it.
Throughout its entire marketing campaign, you couldn't hear anything about this game without also hearing the term open zone, which is what Sonic Team calls the game instead of open world. Apparently, they originally wanted to put Sonic in a more traditional open world, but couldn't make it work without it feeling boring, so they decided to scrap the idea and go with their open zone idea instead, where Sonic traverses a level geometry similar to what he's been running through in the entire series, just in a wide open space rather than linear levels. This means there are what feel like hundreds of platforming challenges littered throughout each island, ensuring that you always have something to do while exploring. I think this idea ended up panning out really well in the end, as this system ensures that there is always something to do while exploring. In a more traditional open world, you often find yourself simply running from one landmark to the next, with maybe enemies getting in your way here and there. And while this game has those things, it also gives you something to do while going in between each objective, by giving you engaging bite-sized platforming sections. I would have preferred if all these sections could have somehow been more naturally built into the world, rather than having all these floating objects everywhere, but I think with the amount there are in this game, this was a good compromise. The platforming sections that are actually built into and under the world, though, are some of the highlights of the entire open world. I do also appreciate that these sections do genuinely get more challenging and less automated as the game goes on. There's a lot of dash pads and springs early on, but the game expects more from you as you progress to each island, which comes in stark contrast to Forces, which has a very stagnant difficulty curve the entire game. However, the platforming exploration wouldn't be fun at all if Sonic controlled poorly, but no siree, he does not. I can confidently say this is the best Sonic has ever controlled in 3D, at least in my opinion. They took the basis of Sonic's moveset from other Boost-era games, giving him all of his moves from those games, with some added-on moves from other titles, including the Drop Dash from Sonic Mania, which I actually didn't really find a ton of use for in this game, but it's cool that it's here, and the Bounce Bracelet from Adventure 2, which is essential for getting up to high places, and keeping up the pace in those platforming sections, especially in cyberspace. And they combined all of these things with the smoothest turning that Sonic doesn't even need the drift from previous games anymore. I honestly feel like it's going to be difficult going back to other modern games with how perfected Sonic's control is in this one. And if you don't like how he controls by default, you can tweak a bunch of different values such as speed, acceleration, turn speed, etc. in the options menu. My personal favorite is to turn down his max speed to 0. Just look at his little legs go! They did remove the boost's ability to damage enemies, and instead replaced it with one major addition to Sonic's moveset. Sonic can level up various attributes in this game and unlock moves on a skill tree. It's cool seeing these light RPG elements show up in a game since Unleashed, and the moves he can use are really cool and flashy. But a lot of them kind of fulfill the same purpose of being flashy finishers, which is what I thought when I first started unlocking them, but then the loading screen tutorials started encouraging me to chain the moves together, and that's where I discovered the true potential of Sonic's moveset. Coming up with unique chains to deal damage and juggle enemies became a game in of itself. But even with all of the cool and flashy moves at Sonic's disposal, the Silent remained my favorite throughout the whole game. Using Sonic speed to wrap around as many enemies as possible and force them into the air, making them vulnerable to combos, never really got old for me the whole way through. You can even use a quick side loop later on in the game to make this process even faster, which is a super cool technique because you can use it to throw enemies in the air and then chuck them back down, especially super cool to use on bosses. The combo system is fun, but the way Sonic needs to avoid and make these enemies and bosses vulnerable is what makes the combat truly interesting for me. They all take advantage of a different one of Sonic's abilities, such as quick stepping, rail grinding, homing attacking with proper timing and aim, etc. This is in stark contrast to enemies in pretty much every previous Sonic game, where they would all eventually go down to a homing attack, a bounce, a boost, werehog stretch. Even with the werehog, every enemy eventually fell to the same strategy of just being punched a bunch of times. And while I think the combat in some of those older games is still fine because it wasn't the main focus, I just love to see how much they've evolved it this time around, and I really hope they expand upon it in later games. This even extends to the main Super Sonic Titan battles, where you keep Sonic's normal moveset just on a much larger and flashier scale. They require different strategies and feel genuinely pretty challenging to beat, not to mention the absolutely jaw-dropping feats Sonic achieves while fighting these monstrosities, including wielding a comically large sword just to slice the third one in half. It's such a sick finisher, dude. This all creates what I believe to be the absolute best Super Sonic battles in the entire series, and the absolute highlight of the game. There is no competition.
So with all that in mind, the combat is... What is that? Seriously, what is that?
Oh god! That is just one of the absolute fire bangers that play over each fight. Oh my god, these songs are so good. These songs are so over the top, cheesy as hell, metal as fuck, and I love it. They fit each fight so well and are some of my favorite vocal themes in this series now. I'd recommend literally any of them. They are so badass. In fact, I'd recommend the entire soundtrack. It's not only huge, consisting of over 150 tracks, but each track enhances the mood of any given moment so well, from the relaxing, adventurous island themes while exploring, to the tense hopelessness of the dire situation in the world's last hour. To the rocking, bopping tracks that play in the cyberspace stages, and everything in between. Sonic games have always had great music, but this game somehow even evolves this aspect of the series as well, which is how much variety there is here. I don't think there's a single song in the entire game I didn't at least enjoy. I would say maybe the battle themes can be a little generic, and I don't really remember any of them off the top of my head. What they lack in quality, they definitely make up for in quantity. Trust me on this one. Each island, with the exception of the fourth, we'll get to it, follows the same general formula of Sonic needing to find the Chaos Emeralds, which are usually either through story progression by giving each character of each island enough collectibles you get from exploration, or locked behind these special cages. The only way to unlock these cages is with special keys, and there's a few different ways to obtain these keys. You can find them hidden in the world, you can get them from fishing with Big. Yeah, there's a cute little fishing minigame with Big, and unlike certain other games, the fishing is completely optional and is genuinely relaxing. Every cast comes at the cost of these purple coins that you can find hidden in the overworld, and Sonic can find some goofy ass shit here. Look at how stoked he is about a fucking car tire, bro. Ladies, get yourself a man that looks at you the way Sonic looks at this tire, okay? You can trade in the stuff you catch for basically any of the main collectibles besides Chaos Emeralds, which is nice when you don't want to search everywhere for whatever that one last thing may be. This is especially helpful when you want to max out your levels so you can get all the Cocos and give it to this one really fucking slow guy that makes you level up everything one by one. Why did they make it like this when the power and defense guy is all at once? I don't get it. I don't get it. The other main way to collect keys is by entering and completing challenges within the cyberspace portals. These portals are hidden around the islands similar to shrines in Breath of the Wild, and they transport Sonic back to a simpler time, in more ways than one. These stages serve to break up the non-linear exploration with some classic old-fashioned linear action stages of old. Which is weird, because the overworld already has plenty of linear action already built into it, but I digress. The levels are a slightly different take on the boost style of gameplay introduced in Sonic Unleashed, because like in the overworld, the boost still doesn't damage enemies. Trust me, I tried.
Jump is way better. I meant to jump. God damn it. The boost not damaging enemies is it's so hard to like not want to do that. I keep thinking boosting will kill enemy. Even while I'm saying that, I tried to boost to get it. Damn it.
So you are forced to either slide or homing attack into baddies to take them out, which actually I kind of like. It gives these stages a different vibe compared to those games. The boost not only doesn't do damage, but is also slowed down considerably, making Sonic much easier to control just in general. I've seen a lot of people talk about how hard Sonic is to control during these sections, and I'm sorry, I really don't see it. I can agree, he definitely feels different compared to previous boost games, but after a couple of stages, these new physics felt pretty natural. And hey, after Force's neutered half of his moveset, he finally has all of his moves back again, including a double jump that is actually incredibly useful and worth a damn. I am still not over how horrible that jump was in Forces. Seriously, it's like an eighth of his standard jump height. Why did they even add it? I find Sonic fun to control in both 3D and 2D cyberspace sections. I will give to you that turning is definitely pretty stiff around sharp turns, which makes me think that they probably should have just given him the drift again in cyberspace, but they only gave it to him in a very specific section of one level, which was honestly horrible to control, and I just ended up jumping over all the boost pads and just running through that stage normally when I wanted to get like the red rings and stuff, because the drifting controls were just that awful. Seriously, by far the worst level in the game. Every other level is really fun though. They are built perfectly for speedrunning. Trying to outdo my own times is something I love about Boost Formula games, and these stages are no exception, with some of the S ranks being genuinely challenging to get for the first time in, when did Unleashed come out again? Though a lot of them are still pretty ass easy to get. Alright, time to get into what is probably the most controversial part of this entire game, which is that a decent chunk of the actual level design here in cyberspace is taken from Sonic Adventure 2, Sonic Unleashed, and Sonic Generations, which has made a lot of fans, we'll just say, a little angry. Well, I share this frustration with reused level design. In theory, I didn't really mind it in practice. I wasn't really thinking that hard about it, and honestly, a lot of the designs I didn't even really remember. The only ones that really stuck out to me were the levels that they pulled from Generations, because they used the same level themes from Generations, so it's pretty easy to see what was going on there. And also, about half of these stages do have completely original layouts as far as I can tell, and that these lengthy levels were the entire focus of past games, when they have a pretty relatively minor part in this game. So the only way I feel devs could really allocate the resources to make 30 of these, which makes up the entire level count of Sonic Forces, I might add, they need to make a compromise of some form. Look, yes, I prefer if every stage was original in theory, but being honest, outside of a couple times, I was more so focused on just having fun. You're in and out of these stages within 3 minutes. I do hope the next game will go for a quality over quantity approach to these action stages, similar to how Sonic Adventure approached stages by having Sonic enter stage entrances in the open world, giving them more of a narrative presence. But I think for what this game wants to achieve narratively and through gameplay, cyberspace works pretty well. My biggest gripe with the stages is that there really isn't any good excuse for the fact that they all only use one of 4 different themes, all of which were ripped from Generations. Again, while playing the actual game, I wasn't really thinking about it, and I didn't really care that much about the repetitive themes. But there really should have been at least twice the amount here. Maybe some themes that haven't been reused before, or better yet, something entirely original. This better be the last game that does this crap. I am so sick of seeing Green Hill, and especially Chemical Plant at this point.
It's time to stop!
So yeah, overall I enjoyed the cyberspace, and always looked forward to playing a new level, but it's pretty clearly the cheapest part of the game with its asset and design reuse present throughout. So basically, fight bad guys to get access to cyberspace, go to cyberspace to get keys, use the keys to find Chaos Emeralds, use Chaos Emeralds to take down the big boys, wash, rinse, and repeat. This is a very solid and easy to follow gameplay loop that gives players a lot of freedom as to how they want to tackle these objectives. In my case, I just wanted to see and do everything I could, so I just kept running around, just doing whatever was like nearest to me, and I was very easily distracted while playing this game. And I was just having fun playing through the game, even when I wasn't making direct progress. It just shows how ingenious this open zone formula really turned out to be in the end.
I think I've made it clear so far that I really like this game, like, a lot. Throughout my playthrough, there were even moments where I considering it my favorite game in the series, but something happened here, and it's not pretty. Let's get into it.
Alongside the time pre-orders dropped for Sonic Frontiers, we also got the Steam page description, which described that players will get to explore 5 islands, which sounded kind of incredible. Throughout the rest of the marketing campaign, the only islands that were ever shown off were the first 3. Kronos, the grassy introduction stage, Ares, the vast open desert, which is also where the game peaks in my opinion. This island is incredible, and Chaos, the mountainous volcano island. These 3 islands are all incredible, with each becoming more fun and challenging than that of the last, so by the time that I finally defeated Metal Face, I was really excited to see the 4th island and see what it would look like. This is Rhea Island. Seems a little familiar? Well, that's just because it's the upper portion of Kronos that we couldn't originally explore in the beginning of the game. Like I mentioned during the plot synopsis, Sonic is just suddenly teleported here with no real exploration outside of the towers being the final lock to break the barrier between dimensions. However, to make up for how short this section is, the challenge provided by climbing these massive structures alongside how high the stakes are with the narrative at this point, and the incredible music playing in the background the entire time, all combined to create some of the most engaging gameplay I've ever experienced in any Sonic game. This is probably my favorite moment in the entire game. The music is swelling with intensity. You know Sonic doesn't have much time left, and each tower really feels like you are scaling a massive behemoth that you know with any misstep will send you plummeting back down to the bottom. It's all very powerful, and the only other game to provide me with a similar feeling of gameplay narrative satisfaction is honestly Celeste. The only thing holding this portion of the game back is the art direction. They should have added snow and like a huge blizzard here. Just imagine heavy snow falling during this time, making it hard to see where you are actually running through, with only the glow of the towers themselves illuminating the way. The wind picking up in noise as you speed up and climb up each tower. I think this would have hammered in what Sonic was really going through, and would have created probably my favorite moment in the entire series. Until it's ruined by Sonic's friends holding hands, blah blah blah. I've been over that already, but yeah. I like Rhea for what it is, but I am a little disappointed in what it could have been. Rhea is then followed up by Oranos. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. The final island, which is also grass. Seriously, it's just like they cut Kronos in half and called it a different island. Oh, that's exactly what they did. Remember the structure from near the beginning of the video from the initial gameplay reveal? Well, either Sonic Team had the balls to show off their final level in the first trailer of the game, or this island was originally part of Kronos that was chopped up because they didn't have enough time to finish the actual final level. Okay, I get it. Things happen in game development, and solutions like this need to be employed. And when I was actually playing the game, the thought that Aranos was a sliced-up Chronos never once crossed my mind. I only really found that out from like Twitter and YouTube and shit. Obviously, I would have preferred an original final level theme. A cool Tron-like cyberspace-looking city I think would have been super cool as a final level, as the barriers between reality and cyberspace have been destroyed at this point. So having a weird, distorted, cybery-looking city would have been awesome. Even parts of Aranos kind of already fit that bill with these weird-looking walls. But whatever. As it stands, what Aranos lacks in original theming, it makes up for in gameplay, emotion, exploration, and enemy variety. There's 9 cyberspace stages here as opposed to each previous island's 7, and each level here is completely original, and some of the most fun cyberspace stages in the entire game, with so many different routes to the finish and all having a great mix of speed and platforming, with just the right amount of challenge, I think. Despite some of the boss enemies being recolored versions of enemies from earlier islands, they all have new moves to freshen them up and make them genuinely much more challenging, especially the higher level ninjas. Fucking Naruto motherfuckers. Even then, the new enemies, and especially Ghost, is super cool, who chases you down and tries to suck your rings and throw projectiles at you when you can't attack him directly. You gotta go through these challenging obstacle courses and side-loop a few towers. That's the only way that you can beat him. Really cool and unique fight. These wolves are also a funny man. Fuck! The music here is also probably my favorite track in the entire game. Sonic is quite literally out of time, and the end can unleash their fury on the Earth at literally any time. So Sonic needs to gather the Chaos Emeralds one last time, and this theme that I've been playing encompasses these stakes and tension so well. Where the devs had to cheap out on the art, they made up with almost every other aspect of the game, except one major issue. The 6th Chaos Emerald is hidden within this pyramid that is kind of the main center stage of this island. Sage treats getting this emerald like it's going to be a big deal, with the game even forcing you to play one of these silly hacking mini-games that you've had to play a couple earlier times to gain entry, because that's just how cool this area is going to be. Oh, what the hell? Let's just watch this section play out. Everyone grab your popcorn.
That's it?
What the hell was that? This should have been the final linear portion of the game. It didn't need to be like Eggman Land here or whatever, but a genuine final platforming challenge within the centerpiece of this final island would have helped out this endgame tremendously. There could have been a platforming mixed with some scripted battle sequences against some of the toughest boss enemies in the game while you get lower and lower into the pyramid. Could even have a scripted sequence of needing to like escape the place after getting the Chaos Emerald, or something like that before heading into the final boss. This is the second most blue-balled I've ever been in a Sonic game besides, well, you know. After getting the 6th Chaos Emerald, Sonic is given the last from Eggman, and you are forced into fighting the final Titan then and there, Supreme. Which is weird because I don't see a label. Oh, there it is! Who looks cool, but this fight is honestly a lot less exciting than every other Supersonic fight in the game. It just kind of seems like they had to remove some stuff or something. But the way the main theme of the game, I'm Here, builds from an instrumental version and then the lyrics kick in halfway through the fight, and whew, goddamn, that got me going. Sonic music really can turn any moment into something amazing. Supreme apparently has a lot of unused moves. He certainly could have used more than what he ended up having in the final game, so why turn him off? Very strange, but as it stands, it's a slightly disappointing, if not cool and climactic encounter. But wait, there's still one more fight. After destroying the final Titan, the End tries to make its way into space to do whatever the heck the End does, so Sonic and Sage, who is now in full control of Supreme, which is badass, both take off into space after it. And with Sonic teaming up with her, she is finally willing to share her drip with him. Our boy is no longer dripless. Let's go! With their combined drip, they try to take down the End once and for all through the power of the hacking mini-game. I laughed out loud so much at this point that it turned out that the silly hacking minigame was actually training you for the final boss the entire time. And as different and kind of out of nowhere as this fight is, it's genuinely really tense and challenging, giving you only 3 hits before you have to restart. In fact, this fight is so challenging, it's apparently only regulated to hard mode. So in normal and easy mode, Supreme is apparently the final boss, which, yeah, I'm much happier with this final fight. The music is super heroic, and the end talks so much mad shit the entire time, it's great. She's all like, oh, you may have beaten gods before, Sonic, but I'm cooler than that, you big dummy. They even mentioned they are only an incarnation of the end, which makes me wonder what the implication of this foe coming back in future games could be. Who knows? The fight is weird, but is still a lot of fun and makes the ending climactic in both narrative and gameplay. Well, what else is there to say? I wish the entire game held up the same quality seen throughout the first 3 islands, but it's clear that either budget, time, the fact that Sonic Team is only made up of 60 people, or something else unfortunately got in the way of this game's endgame. I seriously don't get why every Sonic game needs to have so much cool shit left on the cutting room floor, but regardless, this game is incredible. It brings so much to the series with some of the most fun and varied platforming. The open zone structure really did let Sonic Team add so much more platforming compared to any other Sonic game by like a long shot. The narrative brings Sonic back to a more shonen, anime, serious tone with some of the best character interactions and arcs in the series, while adding genuinely interesting lore to everything. The music is incredible, cyberspace is fun to speedrun through despite the stiff turning, the visuals are gorgeous, the gameplay is evolved in so many ways that I'm genuinely excited to see where they continue to take this formula in the future. My only real issues come with all the endgame stuff that I just discussed, but even then, none of that stuff is really that bad, but does still bring the game down a little bit. Here is my current main game Sonic tier list. At one point during my initial playthrough, I almost considered making this my favorite in the entire series, but after playing to completion and looking back, Frontiers lines up more around here. Sonic 2 is just a very personal game for me, and Sonic Unleashed has way higher highs than this game does, and especially the end game is way better despite some weirdness with that game's final boss. But it's still really high up on the list, and I'm just so happy to say that, dude. If you're a Sonic fan and you somehow haven't played this game, please, I implore you to give it a shot. Ask for it for Christmas, borrow it from a friend. I implore you to do whatever you need to play this game.
Thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you for coming out and sitting through this hour-long video. It took years off my life, so thank you. Again, I appreciate if you send it to any friends or anyone that might be interested. If you like the video, like it, give me feedback in the comments, and feel free to subscribe. And watch out for more content like this that'll be coming out soon. Probably won't be as long as this, but whatever. I hope you have a happy holiday and stay safe out there.
Then one foggy Christmas Eve, Eggman came to say, in his underpants, Sonic, with your shoes so red, won't you run and pull my sled? Then how the hedgehogs loved him as they shouted out with glee, yippee! Sonic's the fastest hedgehog, you'll go down in